Hey everyone, this is Athletes and Antiquities, and for my second card of the day episode, I'm going to show off one of the most important cards in Pokemon TCG history, and I'm going to tell you why it set the pace for the game for the decade after it was released. So why is this random EX card from 2003 so important in terms of the Pokemon TCG as it evolved? The answer is it's all because of the 200 HP in the top right. This 200 HP was a massive power creep from what we had seen prior, and this massive power creep caused Nintendo to have to keep on one-upping themselves. And that's why we went from this, then we got the uppercase EXs, then we got the then we got the Mega Evolutions, then we got the GXs and the Vs. Every single thing that comes out has to top the thing from previous because of the precedent that this card set. Before this card came out, the most HP that any Pokemon had was 120. Up in base set, you had the base set Charizard and the Chansey. The Blissey? It was one of the two. Those two were the only ones that had 120 HP. And then with Jungle, Fossil, Rocket, all the WotC sets up through Aquapolis, Skyridge, all of them matched this rule of nothing goes past 120. And the reason why was because they wanted cards from base set to be able to be played with cards from Expedition and Skyridge. And these cards that were produced years later, they still wanted them to be able to be cohesive together. But then Nintendo took over the card producing rights from WotC in 2003. And that's when they wanted to kind of make it something of their own. So they added these EX cards. But the first set, EX Ruby and Sapphire, still followed that rule from before. Here's an example of an EX card from Ruby and Sapphire. This is Scyther, obviously. But these cards, they were good, they stood out, they were flashy, but they didn't break that kind of unspoken rule of surpassing 120 HP. Even the Mewtwo from this set didn't do that, the Mewtwo EX. And the reason why was because these EXs in Ruby and Sapphire were only basics. But then when Sandstorm came out, the second set, they added evolutions. So that's when you see Wailord, you see Blaziken, I'm pretty sure Swampert was in there. All these cards are all of a sudden eclipsing that 120 HP. And with Wailord, they just decided to go crazy. Going from 120 to 200 is ludicrous. They almost doubled what the standard of how big can something get in the game. And them doing that, I think, kind of opened up a can of worms that they didn't realize. Because then once Wailord got out of rotation, then they had to find something to kind of top that. And they actually weren't able to. Wailord EX had the highest HP for any card with 200 for over 10 years. It took them until 2015 with the Mega Venusaur EX to finally surpass that. And I think it was because they realized 200 was just way too high. Thankfully, Wailord's attacks weren't that great, because if he had great attacks plus this exorbitant HP, he would have dominated the metagame, but he didn't. So instead, other EXs that were leaner, like this Lugia, were on the forefront of the meta. Like, he only had 100. He had half of what Wailord did, but just because of his attacks and his playability and his Pokebody, it kind of set him apart. So thankfully, Wailord didn't break the game, but he certainly did set that standard. And they realized it was way too high, which is why it took them until 2015, 12 years later, to finally eclipse that again once Megas came back. And now they've kind of gone into a downward spiral of having to constantly one-up the set from prior. They don't want the most powerful card to be locked away in black and white, or X and Y, or Sun and Moon. They want to always have the hottest cards be in the current set. So now they're chasing their own tail, raising the powers and the HP, the numbers are getting larger, the arts are getting more flashy, because they're trying to outdo themselves from previously. And it's kind of because of this card right here, because of this crazy precedent that it set. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to go over. But I also just like this card, not only for the history from that aspect, but just because of the way it looks. Like, I don't know why, just the holofoil background is beautiful on this card. All of the EXs are phenomenal, but just the blue, like the deep ocean colors behind the Wailord just work great. And another thing that I wish though, is I wish that the Sandstorm EXs copied the way that Ruby and Sapphire dealt with the holos. So as you can see, I don't know why they didn't, but I'm gonna go into that. So as you can see with this Ruby and Sapphire, the holo goes right to the edge. It's like a mirror finish up until the edge, but the Wailord has a white border here. And the reason why was because they realized this e-reader functionality at the bottom here. You're supposed to swipe it in the e-reader thing that goes into the Game Boy, and it'd give you like a mini game or a Pokedex entry or something. But they realized with this holofoil finish going right to the edge, when you'd swipe it, it would instantly just destroy the holofoil. So to avoid that, they added this white border with Sandstorm. But I kind of like the way it looks very clean, having the holofoil just be perfect up until the edge. And you can see that with the Ruby and Sapphire, as well as the early promos like this Groudon EX. This is a beautiful copy. It looks so much, it's like a little flashier, but it just looks cleaner. And then so then they switched to this, and they stayed with it, because you can see with the later EXs, like the Lugia I showed, it doesn't have this Ruby and Sapphire holo edge. It has the newer one with the white kind of like fade, and it looks good. But I wish they would go back, because people weren't really using the e-reader anyway, so they were kind of fixing a problem that very few people had, and it kind of sacrificed the looks about it, but from a little bit. Like, I don't really like the white border as much, but I just the art of the card kind of outweighs that. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't really care. There's just a small nitpick. Thought you guys might find it interesting. And another thing is, like, these cards, they're very condition sensitive. So I don't want to get into the price, because this isn't supposed to be about like investing in stonks. It's supposed to just be about like enjoying the cards. But there's only 291 of these that are graded an 8 or higher. And that might seem like a lot, but it's really not, compared to WotC holos and obviously things that you're getting now, but even like through X and Y and stuff like that. Those populations are so much higher than these EXs. And these arts, I think, blow them all out of the water. These arts, I prefer these over WotC. I think these are so beautiful. And for having only less than 300 8 or higher just seems so low to me. So I don't know if there's a lot in them that people are just haven't shipped out because the prices haven't been there previously, but there's not a lot of these. So if you want one, I definitely recommend picking it up. But this 8, I got it like a year ago for a little over $100, which is one of the more pricey EXs at the 8 level. Most of them are less than 100, but this is one of the more desirable ones, so it makes sense. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the EX era, this card in general, like what it kind of did for the hobby, the power group that we've seen since then, and just yeah, just let me hear your thoughts. Thanks. See you.